Back in the 1980s, everything seemed simpler. Giant computers took up whole desks, cell phones were just starting out, and toys were the big stars. Among them, the Rubik's Cube kept kids busy for hours. If you want to give a gift to someone who grew up in the 70s or just relive that magic, come along with me through 20 classic Christmas presents that defined the decade and that many kids today barely even got to know. Rubik's Cube. In 1974, Hungarian architect Erno Rubik created a curious object to teach his students three-dimensional geometry, a cube that could twist on all sides without falling apart. He called it the Magic Cube, and only after patenting the mechanism in 1975 and taking it to the international market in 1977 did the world come to know it as the Rubik's Cube. The puzzle has 6 faces, each one made up of 9 small squares. The rule seems simple. Twist it until each side is just one solid color. In practice, though, there are more than 43 quintillion possible combinations, which helps explain why, in the 1980s, the cube exploded in popularity, sold millions of units, and received the German Award for Best Puzzle of 1980. Its success led to the first World Championship in Budapest in 1982, won with a time of 22.95 seconds. With new solving methods and cubes getting faster and faster, records came crashing down. In 2024, Max Park set a time of 3.13 seconds. Far beyond being just a toy, the cube made its way into movies, TV shows, artworks, and classrooms, becoming a symbol of mental challenge and creativity, and, in 2014, earning a place in the U.S. National Toy Hall of Fame. Today, it's still in the hands of collectors, competitors, and curious minds, serving as a gateway into the world of logic puzzles and speed solving, where every twist tells a new story. Cabbage Patch Kids. In 1982, the Cabbage Patch Kids hit store shelves and quickly became a craze. They were dolls with soft bodies and plastic heads, but the detail that made all the difference was the adoption certificate. Instead of just buying a toy, kids were welcoming a new member into the family, choosing a name, taking care of them, introducing them to everyone. That feeling of responsibility and affection created a special bond that went beyond a quick, everyday play session. Each doll had its own look and a different backstory, which helped boys and girls with all kinds of personalities see themselves in what they were holding. It didn't take long for them to become the most wanted Christmas present of the 1980s and spill over into other products. Kids' clothing, bedding, school supplies, and even a video game, Cabbage Patch Kids: Adventures in the Park. The peak came in 1984 when the brand moved about $2 billion in sales around the world. The impact was so big that in 1992, the dolls were chosen as mascots for the United States Olympic team, and each athlete got one to take to the games. To this day, new versions keep showing up in stores, keeping alive that emotional memory that deeply marked so many childhoods. And whenever a new batch comes out, it reminds people how a simple toy can carry entire stories. Transformers action figures. Remember those Christmas toys from the 80s and 90s that are worth a small fortune today? Transformers action figures are one of the best examples. They came out of the Japanese Diaclone and Micro Change lines, but got a new name and identity when Hasbro brought to the West robots that transformed into cars, planes, and weapons, creating iconic characters like Optimus Prime and Megatron. The craze exploded with the cartoon and comic books, which helped cement the brand in pop culture. In the 90s, Transformers had to compete for shelf space with other crazes, but they came roaring back in the 2000s, boosted by new TV series and Hollywood movies. In November 2024, the importance of these figures was recognized when they were inducted into the National Toy Hall of Fame, alongside My Little Pony and the card game Phase 10, proving that those robots still tug at the nostalgic memories of a lot of people. Nintendo Entertainment System. When Nintendo released the family computer in Japan on July 15, 1983, it probably had no idea that the little device would change the course of video games. Renamed the Nintendo Entertainment System when it arrived in the United States in 1985, the NES showed up at a delicate moment. The American market had just gone through a huge crash. Public confidence was low, and a lot of people thought home consoles were just a passing fad. Instead of following the design standards of the time, Nintendo bet on a look that resembled an audio component with a horizontal console and a cartridge that slid into the front. The controller also brought a different proposal with a cross-shaped directional pad and buttons laid out in a simple but efficient way, which ended up influencing practically every controller that came after it. The real strength of the NES, though, was in its games. Super Mario Bros., The Legend of Zelda, and Metroid helped define genres, solidify characters, and turn the Nintendo brand into a synonym for video games. By the end of its commercial run, the console had sold more than 61 million units worldwide and had made it very clear that video games had earned a permanent place in the living room. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. It started as an animated series by Filmation inspired by Mattel's toy line, but it quickly went way beyond the toy aisle. Between 1983 and 1985, huge seasons of 65 episodes were produced, enough to make Eternia a daily presence on TV and turn the blonde hero into a symbol of the 80s. The success was so big that in 1985, the animated movie The Secret of the Sword introduced She-Ra to the public and paved the way for her own series, expanding the universe with new realms and conflicts. Around the same time, the special He-Man and She-Ra, a Christmas special, took the characters into a Christmas adventure full of action, mixing holiday vibes with battles against evil. Reruns kept the franchise alive until the end of the decade and continued on the USA Network until 1990, while the name Masters of the Universe spread into comic books, a live-action movie in 1987, and an animated reboot in 2002. Since 2009, the editions released by BCI Eclipse have been out of circulation, but the series still circulates in the emotional memory of those who grew up in that era and are still finding new ways to revisit this universe. Today, it still shows up in collections, fan discussions, and new heroic fantasy projects. Game & Watch. Between 1980 and 1991, Nintendo put the Game & Watch series in people's pockets, small devices that combined an electronic game and a digital clock in the same LCD screen. Created by Gunpei Yokoi, each one came with a single game, simple but addictive, along with clock and alarm functions and, in some models, even a stopwatch. The first title, Ball, was an instant hit and helped cement Nintendo's place in the handheld market. In 1982, Yokoi introduced the D-pad, the cross-shaped directional pad that solved the problem of bulky controls on handheld devices. The idea was so important that it later earned Nintendo a Technology and Engineering Emmy Award. In the following decade, versions with 2 screens and a clamshell design appeared, a layout that would directly inspire the Game Boy Advance SP, the Nintendo DS, and, years later, the 3DS. With straightforward games focused on quick challenges, Game & Watch won over kids and adults and showed that there was room for dedicated portable experiences. So much so that, in 2021, Nintendo revisited the concept with a special edition celebrating the 35th anniversary of The Legend of Zelda, connecting the nostalgia of the early handhelds with today's interest in collectibles and classic re-releases. Garbage Pail Kids. They were born in 1985 when Topps decided to poke fun at the cutesy vibe of the Cabbage Patch Kids, which were a huge hit on store shelves at the time. Instead of angelic little faces, the stickers showed wrecked kids caught up in bizarre accidents and absurd situations, always with a pun for a name. Atom Bomb, for example, appears setting off an explosion coming out of his own head. Blasted Billy is the same joke with a different twist. Each card came as a die-cut sticker, with the character and nameplate separated, ready to end up on notebooks, folders, and any free surface. On the back, many cards had pieces of a big jigsaw puzzle that only appeared when the collector put several cards together, which fueled trades, rivalry, and the hunt for missing numbers. Over time, Topps released 15 series in the United States and adapted versions for other countries, some including oversized cards and posters. The growth of the line, though, came with pushback. Schools started banning the cards for being a distraction, and in Mexico, the stickers stopped entering the country in 1988. After a change in the law, blocked products that showed minors in situations seen as degrading or violent. My Little Pony. Since the 1980s, My Little Pony has followed different generations. The brand was born in 1981 when Hasbro launched colorful ponies with symbols on their flanks, the famous cutie marks, that helped give each character its own identity. The toys' success quickly led to animated specials, movies, and series, taking the ponies off the shelves and turning them into a constant presence on screen. In the 1990s, interest faded, but the franchise started gaining strength again in 2003 with a new wave of toys and productions that reignited the curiosity of kids and collectors. The turning point came in 2010 with the series My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic, which updated the look, expanded the universe, and brought more elaborate stories. That phase won over not only children, but also many adults, the bronies, who got deeply involved with the characters and themes. From there, spin-offs like Equestria Girls in 2013 and Pony Life in 2020 appeared, along with movies, comic books, and all kinds of products. Over time, My Little Pony outgrew the toy line label and became a meeting point between childhood memories, pop culture, and fan communities spread across the globe, which helps explain why these ponies are still so present in the collective imagination and continue to find space for new versions and reinterpretations. Care Bears. Created in 1981 by illustrator Elena Kucharik for American Greetings, the Care Bears started out as simple characters on greeting cards, but didn't stay on paper for long. The success was so big that they became a toy line and also got a cartoon that aired between 1985 and 1988. Each bear has a symbol on its belly that expresses its way of feeling and acting, like Tenderheart's heart and Cheer Bear's rainbow, helping children name emotions and put themselves in someone else's shoes. The message of caring and sharing marked the childhood of many people in the 1980s. After the 10 original bears, the Care Bear cousins arrived, like Braveheart Lion and Cozy Heart Penguin, expanding the cast and adding more stories about kindness, while the old toys turned into collectible items fought over in auctions, and the brand's universe stayed alive for new generations. Teddy Ruxpin. In the 1980s, when cassette tapes still filled the shelves, a different kind of teddy bear showed up. Teddy Ruxpin. He looked like just another cute stuffed toy, but all it took was hitting play on his back for the magic to begin. An internal mechanism read the tape and made his mouth and eyes move along with the narration, giving the impression that the bear himself was telling the story. Behind him was Ken Force, along with the team at Alchemy Inc., with contributions from Larry Larson and John Davies, who imagined a character that mixed the comfort of a plush toy with emerging technology. The result exploded in 1985 and 1986, when Teddy Ruxpin became the best-selling toy and a symbol of a new kind of children's entertainment. Each tape brought a different adventure, from fairy tales to original plots, and many kids ended up listening to the same stories over and over, memorizing lines and creating their own worlds from them. Later, the tape was swapped out for a digital cartridge in an attempt to keep up with home electronics and keep the character current. But in 1987, the Silicon Valley company funding the project went bankrupt, and Teddy's constant voice began disappearing from store shelves. Even so, the character stayed alive in the memory of those who grew up with him, just like what happened with the Atari 2600. Two icons that burst onto the scene, faded quickly, but left behind the feeling that they were a few steps ahead of their time. G.I. Joe action figures. G.I. Joe didn't start out as just a toy. It was the idea that redefined what it meant to play soldier. In 1964, Hasbro introduced 12-inch articulated figures with clothes, weapons, and gear that could be swapped out, something completely new for kids at the time. Instead of simple static dolls, kids got characters ready to take on any mission. Years later, in the 1980s, the brand reinvented itself with smaller figures, around 3.75 inches tall, each one inspired by different branches of the armed forces. This new phase came along with a cartoon, comic books, and a universe full of teams, villains, and secret operations, which made every play session feel like a brand new episode. The focus on coordinated action, teamwork, and strategic battles turned G.I. Joe into a reference point for other action figure lines, paving the way for games, movies, and collectibles that still spark both nostalgia and curiosity in new fans today, while new versions keep showing up to keep that feeling of being in charge of a big operation alive. Pound puppies. Back in the 1980s, amid all the new toys on store shelves, a bunch of stuffed puppies caught people's attention. Pound puppies with droopy ears, squished noses, and that slightly sad look that begged for a hug. They came in little cardboard dog houses, as if they were in a shelter waiting for an owner, and each one had an adoption certificate inviting the child to officially welcome the new friend. The idea, created by Mike Bowling, rode the wave of Cabbage Patch Kids and the adoption concept that was already firing up kids' imaginations. They first blew up in Canada. Later, when Tonka brought the line to the United States, the puppies turned into a craze. They quickly slid into kids' pop culture. They got books, minifigures, a cartoon series that ran for several seasons, and even a feature-length film, reinforcing the feeling that they weren't just stuffed animals, but characters in a whole universe. In the 1990s and early 2000s, the brand was updated with versions that mimicked specific breeds and included interactive features like barking and small movements. Later, in 2014 and 2019, new relaunches came with modernized plushies, different sizes, and of course, the adoption certificate, keeping alive the ritual of saving the little dog. For a lot of people, just one look at one of these pups is enough to remember the sound of the cardboard box opening and that feeling of having just brought a new best friend home. Light Bright. It marked the childhood of many families in the 1980s. Before screens took over the house, the ritual was simple. Turn off the lights, switch on the panel, and plug in colored pegs until the picture appeared. Animals, stars, letters, and landscapes would show up as if the drawing were lit from the inside, and that glow held kids' attention for long stretches. The toy came with templates, but it quickly turned into a space to create your own designs. Some kids copied TV characters, others invented symbols, names, or full scenes from memory. Each peg picked opened up a different possibility, and the fun was in testing combinations, changing colors, pulling everything apart, and starting over, more interested in the process than the final result. While the kids built their pictures, many parents would lean in to give a suggestion or just watch. Light Bright joined in on family game nights, rainy days, and solo play sessions where time flew by. For those who grew up with it, remembering the lit-up panel still brings back that feeling of sitting on the floor, calmly choosing the next peg, as if turning on the toy was all it took for imagination to take over. Speak and Spell. Imagine being a kid at the end of the 1970s and, instead of a simple workbook, finding a small orange device that talks to you. That was the Speak and Spell, created by Texas Instruments in 1978 to help children from age 7 and up practice spelling and pronunciation in English. Inside, a digital signal processor and the TMC0280 synthesizer produced an unmistakable mechanical voice, something surprising for the time. On the front, a keyboard let you type in words, while ROM cartridges could be swapped to unlock new challenges and game modes, keeping the learning experience fresh. The mix of portability and games turned studying into playtime, which could go from the classroom to the backseat of the car. The success was so big that the Speak and Spell showed up in movies like E.T. the Extraterrestrial and ended up in the music world too, with artists using its voice in experiments and circuit bending. Today, it lives on in the memories of those who used it and in the collections of retro tech fans, helping us understand where many of the electronic learning tools we use now came from. Atari 26,000. In 1977, the Atari 2600 hit stores as the Atari Video Computer System and changed how people played at home. Instead of having games built into the console, it used ROM cartridges that could be swapped in seconds, making room for an ever-growing library. The console came with 2 joysticks, paddle controllers, and the game Combat, which already featured duels between tanks and planes. The idea started in 1975 in a project codenamed Stella, developed by Cyan Engineering, an Atari subsidiary. The company, famous for its arcade machines, wanted to bring the arcade experience into the living room, taking advantage of the drop in microprocessor costs. In the middle of financial difficulties, Atari was sold to Warner Communications in 1976, a key step for the console to reach the market. At first, there were only 9 games, with modest but addictive graphics. The big jump came in 1980 with Space Invaders, which boosted sales and turned the Atari into a worldwide phenomenon. But the fast pace came at a cost. Weak versions of hits like Pac-Man and the disastrous E.T. eroded public confidence and helped push the industry toward the 1983 crash. Strawberry Shortcake Dolls. Before becoming a doll, Strawberry Shortcake started out as a little girl drawn for American greetings cards. Created by artist Barbie Sargent, she first appeared on Valentine's Day cards in the early 1970s, still called Girl with a Daisy or Strawberry Girl. The idea worked so well that in the 1980s, the character stepped off the page and came to life in a line of scented dolls, each one inspired by foods and desserts. The main version had a strawberry scent, while her friends came with blueberry, lemon, and other aromas, always matching look, name, and fragrance. Then came the animated specials, which took Strawberry Shortcake and her crew into the colorful world of Strawberry Land, with light, imaginative stories. Over the years, different collections appeared, with changes to clothes, features, and styles, keeping up with new generations without losing the original charm. Today, even without taking up as much shelf space as before, the dolls still show up on online stores, at fairs, and in private collections, keeping alive the emotional memory of those who grew up with that sweet smell of childhood. Lego sets. You've probably seen those building blocks that snap together with a precise click and let you create cars, buildings, or small robots in just a few minutes. They're part of a system developed by the Danish Lego Group, a family company that turned plastic pieces into imagination tools for the whole world. Each brick is made from a durable material designed to withstand years of use, being taken apart and rebuilt countless times without losing its grip. Along with gears, special plates, and minifigures, these blocks form sets that can follow the instructions or turn into something completely new. That's where the magic is. The same box that builds a spaceship today can become a house, a bridge, or an entire city tomorrow, depending on the ideas of the person playing. Kids, teens, and adults use Lego to experiment with solutions, test structures, simulate machines, and give shape to projects that would often stay only on paper. Over time, this universe has spawned movies, games, building competitions, and theme parks around the world, opening even more paths for anyone who wants to explore this hands-on way of creating. Simon Game. Simon is one of the best-known memory games out there. Created by Ralph H. Baer and Howard J. Morrison with programming by Lenny Cope, it went from a toy studio into many homes. The idea seems simple: 4 colors, 4 sounds, and a sequence to repeat. But with each correct answer, the pattern gets longer, speeds up, and demands more focus, turning just a few seconds of play into a challenge that really grabs the player. While trying to keep up with Simon's rhythm, the person trains the ability to recognize, store, and recreate patterns. That skill shows up when studying, organizing tasks, working in groups, or making quick decisions. Because of that, the game started being used in classrooms and educational projects as a tool to stimulate memory, focus, and reasoning. Even with so many screens fighting for attention, Simon keeps getting new physical and digital versions that stay true to the gameplay that made it famous. It shows how ideas can cross generations without losing strength. And looking at its journey, it's hard not to remember other classics that left their mark on the toy world, like Lego sets, which invite you to combine pieces, test possibilities, and create challenges in your own way. Etch-a-sketch. When you talk about Christmas in the 1960s, it's almost impossible not to think of the Etch-a-sketch. Launched in 1960, it quickly spread through homes and became a staple on wish lists. Two knobs, a gray screen, and suddenly cities, characters, mazes, signatures appeared. Turning a little too far, messing up a line, shaking it to erase and starting over was all part of the fun. The charm wasn't just in the final picture, but in the process. Your hand trying to keep up with your imagination, line by line, curve by curve. For many kids, it was their first contact with the idea of creating something of their own, even if it disappeared in seconds with a simple shake. Still, that erase gesture never felt like a loss. It felt more like an invitation to try again. Today, remembering the Etch-a-sketch also means remembering quiet afternoons in the living room, the sound of shaking the toy, and the feeling of drawing without pencils, paper, or mess. It remains a symbol of a time when a simple object was enough to open a whole space for stories in a child's mind. And for a lot of people, just hearing the name of this toy is enough to bring all of that rushing back in a few seconds. Easy Bake Oven. For many people who grew up in the 1960s, 1970s, and even the 1980s, the Easy Bake Oven wasn't just another toy on the Christmas list. It was their first contact with the kitchen, a simple way to feel like they were making real food without leaving the living room. Launched in 1963, Kenner's little oven used a light bulb as the heat source and still managed to turn mixes into cakes, cookies, and small desserts that brought siblings, cousins, and neighbors around the table. More than just baking batter, it gave kids a sense of independence, measuring, mixing, waiting for the light to heat up, and then opening that little door as if it were a big professional oven. In many homes, the ritual was repeated on holidays, school breaks, or rainy weekends, always accompanied by laughter and a sweet smell in the air, creating memories forever tied to that colorful little box. Over time, the Easy Bake Oven became a fixture in holiday catalogs, TV commercials, and store windows until it turned into an icon of an era. When someone talks about retro toys, it's almost automatic to think of it and those metal trays sliding in and out of the oven as if each batch were a new scene from a Christmas movie that never stopped coming back. And amid lights, decorations, and music, that oven helped turn the living room into a set filled with excitement and anticipation. Slip and slide. In the 1970s, there were few summer toys as memorable as the slip and slide. Launched back in 1961, it became a tradition in many backyards, a summer landmark for those who grew up in the 60s and 70s. All you had to do was stretch the long plastic sheet out on the grass, hook up the hose, and in seconds, an ordinary yard turned into a sliding track. Kids would run, dive, and shoot across the lawn in bursts of laughter and splashes, repeating the game until the end of the afternoon. Each slide seemed to record a story, connecting siblings, neighbors, and friends in a shared memory. For many baby boomers and members of Generation X, the image of a slip and slide in the backyard is almost a shortcut back to those simple summers full of sun, water, and a sense of freedom, when the biggest decision of the day was figuring out who would be the next one to launch onto the slippery track and try to go as far as possible. Weebles. Launched in 1971, Weebles quickly became the kind of toy that seemed to be in every house. The egg-shaped figures rocked back and forth, but never fell down because of the weighted base, and that alone was enough to spark giggles and curiosity in little kids. The bright colors and expressive faces helped give each character a personality, and the different playsets, farm, amusement park, town, invited kids to invent stories, create whole families, and repeat everyday scenes in miniature form. For many people, the peak was that first Christmas when the toy exploded in popularity, when opening a Weebles box meant getting a whole pretend world that fit right on the living room floor. Each new set brought more characters, more situations to explore, and that feeling of an ongoing collection where it always felt like you were just one box away from making the playtime feel complete. Stretch Armstrong. In 1976, a different kind of action figure started showing up on Christmas lists. Stretch Armstrong. At first glance, he looked like just another muscular hero, but once someone pulled on his arms, the whole game changed. His body, made with a special combo of rubber and gel, stretched several times beyond its original size, and then, like magic, snapped back into place. The living room turned into a test lab. Friends pulled, twisted, tied impossible knots, and wanted to find out just how far he could go. Almost always, he held up, tough in the middle of all the laughter and dares. For a lot of people, this figure defines those afternoons at home when fun didn't depend on screens, but on the imagination of whoever insisted on seeing how far Stretch could really stretch. Today, remembering this toy is almost like going back to the living room rug, surrounded by boxes, pillows, and made-up stories, while the stretchy hero passed from hand to hand. Star Wars action figures. In 1978, a toy line changed forever the way fans connected with Star Wars. Kenner launched small action figures about 4 inches tall, simple in articulation, but full of presence on the shelf. From Luke to Darth Vader, each character came with enough detail to let kids recreate battles, make up scenes, and extend the experience long after the movie ended at the theater. Over the following years, more than 100 different figures came out, along with vehicles, ships, and playsets. But when commercial interest in the saga cooled in 1985, production stopped, and many of these toys disappeared from store shelves, circulating mostly among collectors. A decade later, in 1995, the figures returned and reignited both the memories of those who grew up with the original trilogy and the curiosity of a new generation. What keeps this market alive to this day is the combination of limited runs, different packaging, and releases tied to specific movies and moments in the story. Each piece carries a part of that journey, serving as a time capsule, a childhood memory, and a doorway to the next chapter of this Star Wars passion. Barrel of Monkeys. When Lakeside Toys released Barrel of Monkeys in 1965, it looked like just another toy on the shelf. You simply opened the barrel and let the plastic monkeys spill into your hand for the game to begin. The rule was straightforward. Hook one monkey by the arm of another and build the longest chain possible without dropping any. The challenge called for coordination, patience, and repetition, and each round turned into a little mission. The compact size fit in a backpack or bedroom drawer, and at Christmas, the colorful barrel often ended up hidden in stockings hanging by the fireplace. Kids would spread out on the living room floor to see who could build the longest chain, while parents and siblings joined the competition almost without realizing it. Between laughs, shaky hands, and monkeys that fell at the last second, the house would fill with that light family game night vibe. Over time, Barrel of Monkeys became a symbol of a phase when a handful of plastic figures were enough to fill an entire afternoon. Even surrounded by electronic toys, it still stands out as a strong memory of simple, physical fun that brings everyone together around one barrel and a bunch of hanging monkeys. Thanks for coming along with us on this trip through the 25 most memorable Christmas presents of the 80s. Like, comment, subscribe, and let's keep these memories alive together in the next video.